Hey guys, today I'm going to share a little bit about my story of how I started my very first company. I've been at it for about 36 years as a serial entrepreneur, so that was a long time ago. But I'll tell you, at the time I started my first company, I was nothing special, and certainly not anything special now. My upbringing was I grew up in California in a lower middle class family. We were a Christian family. We went to church every Sunday. I went to Christian school. I think we were a bit dysfunctional. My mom was kind of like the church lady, and my dad liked to party, and he was a drunk. So lots of embarrassing moments growing up. I was pretty much a rebel. I think I liked to party in high school, and so I went to school at a school in Whittier called Whittier Christian, and in my junior year, they kicked me out. And so I had to drive all the way from Whittier to Newport Beach, and I finished high school in Newport Beach at a Christian school there. And then at the time when everybody else went to college in our family, no one ever talked about that. So I skipped college and I went and got an office job. And one of the first things that I figured out when I was working in the office was that somebody was the boss, and there was always somebody with a big office in the back, and I always thought, man, I want to be that person. I want to be a business owner. I can even remember during a time when a girlfriend I had back then, her aunt owned a office cleaning business, and every once in a while in the evenings when they ran short on people, we would volunteer to go help her. I think it was called Donna Does It. And when we went into these offices, some of them beautiful, and while everybody was working, I'd go find the biggest office I could find, like the boss's office, and I'd shut the door and I'd go sit behind that desk and I'd rearrange a few things, and I sat and I go, oh, it must be good to be CEO. And even as a small kid growing up, in my very earliest days, I can remember we had an old desk in one of the rooms in our house, and I can remember sitting behind that desk playing boss. And so I think from an early age, I knew I was destined to be a business owner or a CEO, and I wanted to make something of my life from an early age. So what led up to starting a company? And so what I want to cover with you is the year before I started my company. And so I was probably 21, 22 years old. I think I liked to party a lot back then. And after a series of office jobs, I got hired at a staffing company where I worked for 6 months and got fired from there for partying too much. I used to go party with the owner, and but the rule was the next day you had to show up for work no matter what time you came home. And one of the things about me as a partier, I could never do a hangover. And so one night we were up till late, and the next day I called in with the flu. And that didn't go over very well with my boss, and so he fired me. After that, I went through a really rough period. I had broken up with my girlfriend, and at the time we were living together, so I didn't have a place to live. I was literally homeless. I mean, I wasn't on the street homeless, but I was sleeping on people's couches homeless, and life was a mess for me. In fact, things got so bad that I tried to kill myself. And in California at the time, if you try to commit suicide, they lock you up for like 3 days for an evaluation. And so I can remember just the humiliation of, I tried to kill myself as soon as the pain hit. I was all coked out and drunk at the time, and I think I was feeling sorry for myself, and tried to kill myself, and had to go into this 3-day evaluation at a mental health kind of jail kind of place, and I knew, boy, I had hit a rock bottom, and if I was going to do something with my life, I had to make some changes. Back then, at the time, there was a big church in California called the Cathedral, and you may have heard of Robert Schuller, and he was the founding pastor of this big, amazing church. in California. And he was one of the first pastors that I ever heard talk about kind of connecting like the marketplace and ministry and putting them together. And probably the first person I ever heard about connecting the dots between business, purpose, success, and faith. And a lot of people didn't like him because I think a lot of people in the church thought, you know, hey, if you're a Christian, Jesus likes us poor and we need to be suffering, and I wasn't into that. And so I remember calling a prayer line, and I got a whole at the Cathedral, and they sent me this book called Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do. And I read that book, and it inspired me to go after my dreams. So one of the things that it taught me to do, you know, it let me know that these circumstances that I was going through, these tough times, were temporary. And that if I could have a vision, if I could cast a vision on where I wanted to go, I could be successful. So I had all kinds of problems at the time. I didn't have any money. I was unemployed. I had just tried to commit suicide and wasn't even successful at that. And so I was pretty much a mess. And at the time, my girlfriend took me back and, you know, let me stay at her place. And so I was, you know, pretty much, I think, a real loser at the time that I went to start my first company. And so I spent 12 months planning this thing. And what I did was I was able to cast a vision on where I wanted my life, or what I wanted it to look like a year from now. And I spent a lot of time writing it down, detailing, counting the cost in time, energy, and focus, and the money to have the things that I wanted. And so I started planning backwards from 1 year out. And so I'd look and go, okay, at 11 months, I'm gonna have to have this ready. And at 10 months, I'm gonna have to have this ready. And in 7 months, I'll have to have this ready. In 5 months, and 2 months. This month, all I had to do was dream and write it down. And so one of the things that I learned, and this is what I want to share with you, because that was 6 businesses ago over a period of 36 years. And really, there's a same pattern that I've used with every company that I've launched. And even working with, in the last 16 years before I started Cana, in doing business turnarounds, kind of the same philosophy. And so what I want to share with you is, if you can't see where you want to go, you'll never get there. And so one of the things that I learned from that book, Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do, was how to cast a vision, how to write it down, and then also how to go to God and ask Him for His help. When I launched this company, it was a staffing company in Newport Beach. For my first year, I starved, and I wasn't making any money, nothing was working. I mean, I'm 23 years old, young and dumb. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But I started this company, and prior to starting it, I invested a whole lot of time in prayer, and I really felt like God was calling me to be a business owner. And at nighttime, I drove a diesel truck to earn money and pay my bills. But after about a year of making no money, I was pleading with God to give me the wisdom to turn this thing around, and He did. And He gave me an idea that was a game changer. It was innovative at the time, and it set me at the front of the line, and instantly I started making a lot of money. And so all this to tell you, my upbringing, I don't think was that great. It didn't position me for success. The year or so, or the period before I launched my business, my first business, I was a disaster. What was the game changer? What do I think? What was it that led to the eventual success that I had in that company? It was really God. God was the change maker. He was the difference maker in my life. So if you have a vision, one of the things that I've learned is my future, where I'm going, it's never determined by my circumstances. It's determined by my perception of what's possible and the size of my dreams. So that's kind of my story. I hope it gives you hope. If I could do it and I was a mess, certainly you can do it. And that was 36 years ago, and I'm still at it today with my 6th company. You guys go and have a great day. Dream big and do big.